Tonight was supposed to be about Max. That's what Mom said anyway, as she straightened his bow tie and made sure everyone knew whose party it was. The Rockridge Grand shimmered with all the subtlety of a victory parade. I stood near the wall, half shadow, listening to laughter that never quite reached me. I heard my name drifting from the crowd, a question, a rumour, a story about a tech genius from our own little town. I kept my eyes on my glass, counting the bubbles in my water, pretending I didn't care. Then Brooke, Max's perfect fiancée, turned. Her eyes narrowed, recognition dawning like a sudden storm. "Wait, you're that Evelyn, the one behind MedEcho?" The room went silent. Forks froze mid-air. My mother's smile cracked. Max just stared. In the hush, Mrs. Heller whispered, "About time they found out. For the first time, every eye in Rockridge was on me. Not as someone's daughter or sister, but as myself." Funny how it took a stranger to say my name out loud. If you've ever been invisible to the people who should see you most, keep watching. My story isn't what you think. The Grace family, our name was stamped on the Rockridge welcome sign, on plaques in City Hall, and on the lips of every neighbour with a good memory for small-town gossip. My mother, Rebecca, ran the high school like a polished ship. My father, Frank, was the retired police chief who still got nods of respect every time he walked Main Street. And then there was Max, my older brother, the doctor, the golden boy who seemed born to catch every spotlight and never miss a beat. In our house, reputation was everything. Success wasn't a hope, it was an expectation, a map sketched out before you could even write your own name. Max's first stitches in med school became a local headline. When he saved his neighbour's dog after it ate a box of raisins, there was a cake and a story in the paper. Every win was a celebration, every misstep a lesson. For Max, for me, my milestones vanished before anyone could notice. I once came home clutching a state science trophy, breathless, hoping someone would care. Mum smiled over her glasses, patted my head, and told me not to let my grades in English slip. I learned to swallow disappointment in small, practiced doses. I fell in love with computers the way some kids fall in love with summer, unexpected, unstoppable. The glow of a monitor in my room at midnight felt safer than any family dinner. I could make things happen in that blue light, solve puzzles that no one else could even see. My parents chalked it up as just a phase. Max teased me for hiding out with the nerds. Worse than the teasing was the silence. At town events, people would glance my way, then pivot. "Oh, you're Max's sister," they'd say, as if I were a footnote in his story. Teachers asked about him before asking my name. Even the old grocery clerk, Mrs. McAllister, would slip in a quiet, "Your brother's doing us proud." Stability, Mom told me, is the only true success, sweetheart, not gadgets or dreams or overnight schemes. She meant well, I think, but it sounded like a warning. Don't reach too far. I learned it was safer not to shine. But some lights are stubborn. Even when you dim them, they find a way to flicker back on. When I was 16, I won the Oregon State Coding Championship. It was the kind of thing that would have made the front page if my last name had been anyone else's. I stood on a makeshift stage at the university, medal around my neck, my hands shaking, waiting for someone, anyone from my family to show up and clap. But Mum and Dad were across town, sitting in an auditorium where Max was getting his Emerging Young Scientist Award. He had given a speech about family support and gotten a standing ovation. I texted a photo of my trophy to our family group chat. The reply from Mum came an hour later. "That's nice, honey. Don't forget Max's dinner is at 6. It wasn't just the big things that stung. There were little cuts too, the kind you get used to when you're not looking. I once spent weeks quizzing Max for his med school interviews, running mock sessions in the basement until he had every answer down cold. When he got in, the local paper ran a story about our family of achievers. He told them, "I owe it all to my parents." My name never made it past the editing desk. People sometimes say it's better not to want recognition. I tried to believe that. I really did. But it's hard to let go of the hope that maybe, just once, someone would see the spark in you and say it mattered. But not everyone is blind. That year, I met Lila Carter, the new girl with too many questions and a laugh that broke through any gloom. She watched me debug a program in the library, then leaned over my shoulder whispering, "You know you're a genius, right?" We became inseparable. Lila was the only person who seemed to see past the Max's sister label. Tonight was supposed to be about Max. That's what Mom said anyway, as she straightened his bow tie and made sure everyone knew whose party it was. The Rockridge Grand shimmered with all the subtlety of a victory parade. I stood near the wall, half shadow, listening to laughter that never quite reached me. I heard my name drifting from the crowd, a question, a rumour, a story about a tech genius from our own little town. I kept my eyes on my glass, counting the bubbles in my water, pretending I didn't care. Then Brooke, Max's perfect fiancée, turned. Her eyes narrowed, recognition dawning like a sudden storm. "Wait, you're that Evelyn? The one behind MedEcho?" The room went silent. Forks froze mid-air. My mother's smile cracked. Max just stared. In the hush, Mrs. Heller whispered, "About time they found out." For the first time, every eye in Rockridge was on me. Not as someone's daughter or sister, but as myself. Funny, how it took a stranger to say my name out loud. If you've ever been invisible to the people who should see you most, keep watching. My story isn't what you think. The Grace family, our name was stamped on the Rockridge welcome sign, on plaques in City Hall, and on the lips of every neighbour with a good memory for small-town gossip. My mother, Rebecca, ran the high school like a polished ship. My father, Frank, was the retired police chief who still got nods of respect every time he walked Main Street. And then there was Max, my older brother, the doctor, the golden boy who seemed born to catch every spotlight and never miss a beat. In our house, reputation was everything. Success wasn't a hope. It was an expectation, a map sketched out before you could even write your own name. Max's first stitches in med school became a local headline. When he saved his neighbour's dog after it ate a box of raisins, there was a cake and a story in the paper. Every win was a celebration, every misstep a lesson. For Max, for me, my milestones vanished before anyone could notice. I once came home clutching a state science trophy, breathless, hoping someone would care. Mum smiled over her glasses, patted my head, and told me not to let my grades in English slip. I learned to swallow disappointment in small, practiced doses. I fell in love with computers the way some kids fall in love with summer. Unexpected, unstoppable. The glow of a monitor in my room at midnight felt safer than any family dinner. When she suggested we team up for the county hackathon, something in me clicked. Together, we built a hospital communication app that could track patient records without the usual chaos. We didn't win that year, but a local nurse came up to us afterward with tears in her eyes. She told us about a tragedy at the Rockridge Clinic, a medication mix-up that could have been prevented if someone had been listening. Her pain stayed with me. It was Lila's idea to take our code further. "Why just fix one hospital," she said, "when we can help hundreds?" So we did. We spent senior year holed up in her parents' garage, working on what would become MedEcho, writing code through the night, living off cold pizza, dreaming in lines of Python. One night I overheard my parents talking as I walked past their bedroom. Dad's voice was gruff, tired. "Max was born for greatness. Evelyn, she's a dreamer. Good girl, but not built for big things." I froze in the hallway, letting their words stick to my ribs. That was the moment something hardened inside me. I didn't want their pity, and I didn't want their permission. I just wanted proof. proof that dreams could be more powerful than blueprints. Lila noticed my silence the next day. "You don't need them to see you," she told me, eyes fierce and gentle at once. "Let the world do that." When MedEcho finally landed its first contract with a real hospital, a place where people's lives would actually depend on something I built, I celebrated with Lila. Just us, a couple of takeout milkshakes, and a world quietly shifting beneath our feet. No speeches, no family photo, and for the first time I realized that was enough. If you grew up always hearing you were a dreamer, there's a certain thrill to watching the world quietly prove them wrong. MedEcho didn't explode overnight. It grew in silence, one hospital, one late-night code push, one exhausted administrator at a time. By the time I turned 28, our system was running in clinics and hospitals from Portland to Ashland. I'd check the map of active users and see little blue lights blinking across Oregon, each one a place where something I built made a difference. It was addicting in a way I can't explain. Ironically, the hospital board at Rockridge, where Mom chaired the school medical program, was one of the first to sign up for MedEcho. I'd walked those halls as a kid, invisible. Now my code moved through their computers every day, routing life or death messages and medical records. Mom never mentioned it. Maybe she didn't know, or maybe she didn't want to admit that the phase I'd wasted so many nights on had turned into something permanent, something powerful. But not everyone stayed oblivious. The first time I saw my parents publicly complimented for raising such a visionary tech leader, I was at a fundraising gala, standing just out of the spotlight. One of the hospital directors toasted Rebecca and Frank Grace for raising the genius behind MedEcho. My mother smiled, gracious as ever, but when someone asked for details, she changed the subject. Frank just gave that tight-lipped police chief nod, the kind you use when you're bluffing. They had no idea how any of it actually worked. Max, meanwhile, became a local celebrity. The Rockridge Gazette published a full spread about our hometown hero, Dr. Max Grace. There were photos of him volunteering at the free clinic, shaking hands with the mayor, posing with children in his white coat. Every holiday, my parents clipped out articles and taped them to the fridge. When people stopped me in town to ask, "So, you're Max's sister?" I learned to smile and nod, hiding the sting in the pit of my stomach. I stayed out of the spotlight on purpose, building a myth by omission. In the tech world, I was E.G. Carter, my middle initial and Lila's last name combined, just enough camouflage to let the product speak for itself. Reporters speculated about the true founders of MedEcho, guessing at faceless engineers in some Portland loft. It almost became a game. How invisible could I make myself, even as the company became impossible to ignore? Brooke Ellison, Max's fiancée, was the next big variable. She worked for Helix Care, a national healthcare group with deep pockets and an eye for strategic acquisitions. When her team reached out to MedEcho for a partnership, I let Lila handle the initial emails. Brooke's reputation preceded her, sharp, relentless, always chasing the next big thing. I couldn't risk revealing too much, not yet. Besides, it was a little satisfying to imagine how surprised she'd be when she learned the truth. Mrs. Heller, our next-door neighbour, seemed to be everywhere those days, watering her azaleas, chatting up the mailman, stopping me with a sly wink every time I came home for a weekend visit. One morning, she caught me by the mailbox. "You know, dear," she said, "I've been using your system at my clinic for months. The Graces should be proud, even if they don't know what they're proud of yet." Her smile was gentle, but there was a weight behind it, a knowing, a silent encouragement I never got from my own family. Lately, Lila was harder to reach. She'd answer texts with one-word replies, duck out of calls with vague excuses about family or just being tired. I chalked it up to stress until the afternoon I walked into the office and caught her on the phone, voice low, eyes darting. She ended the call abruptly when she saw me, closing her laptop as if it might bite her. I tried to shake it off, but the next morning a stray email pinged my inbox. Meant for her, not me. The subject line, Helix Care offer, final terms. My stomach turned. I realised Lila had been negotiating behind my back to sell our technology outright. Things got complicated the day Max tried to help. I heard about it from Lila, who called me fuming after a meeting with a local investor. Your brother told the investor you're not ready for the big leagues, Ev. He said MedEcho's leadership is inexperienced. Now they want to meet with him instead. I felt a wave of anger and disappointment crashing over years of buried frustration. I confronted Max at our parents' house that evening. He was sitting on the back porch flipping through patient charts. I didn't yell, I just let the silence speak. Why would you say that, Max? He looked genuinely surprised. You never told us you were successful. I thought I was helping. Investors listen to me, Ev. I laughed, bitter and short. Maybe they'd listen to me too if anyone let them try. He frowned, defensive. I didn't mean... Look, I'm just trying to protect you. This is a big world. Please, just let us handle things. We don't want surprises. Something in me snapped. You don't get to write my story, Max. That night I called Lila. She was blunt as always. Why let them write your story at all, Evelyn? You've already outgrown their script. She was right. The more I let my family's version of me define my limits, the more I lost sight of what I'd actually built. I started keeping a folder of press clippings and positive emails, reminders of the lives we'd touched, the emergencies we'd averted. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit with an old family photo in one hand and those articles in the other, weighing the distance between the daughter I'd been and the woman I was now. As Max and Brooke's engagement party approached, I felt the storm gathering. Part of me wanted to skip it, stay invisible, let the night be about them. But another part, louder now, was done hiding. I stared at my reflection, black dress hanging in my closet, press clippings spread across my desk. Maybe for once I didn't have to choose between being quiet and being seen. Maybe the real surprise would be mine to deliver. There's a moment in every story where the mask comes off, where all the polite fiction and careful silence shatters. For me, it happened beneath the chandeliers of Rockridge Grand, in a room packed with everyone who'd ever dismissed, ignored, or misunderstood me. It started with a single question from Brooke. She crossed the floor, her eyes locked on mine, voice ringing out so clear you could almost feel the air ripple. Wait, you're that Evelyn? The one behind MedEcho? The room went deadly quiet. For a split second I wanted to disappear, to laugh it off, to pretend I'd heard wrong. But then I saw the way Max was staring at me, confused like I'd changed shape right in front of him. My mother's hand clutched at her pearls. Dad just looked old, suddenly small beneath all the old pride. Reporters were in the crowd that night, and news of my unmasking spread like wildfire. One of them, a woman from the local paper, stepped forward, mic in hand. Rebecca, Frank, what's it like to have raised such a trailblazer? Why didn't you ever mention your daughter's accomplishments? My parents stumbled over their answers. Rebecca tried to recover with a brittle smile. We always knew Evelyn was bright. She's very private, that's all. Frank mumbled something about humility and letting the work speak for itself, but I could see it in their eyes. This wasn't pride, it was shock, confusion, even shame. Relatives I barely recognized suddenly pushed closer, their voices syrupy with false warmth. You must remember us, Evelyn. Oh, your mother always said you'd do great things. Old friends from high school, who hadn't so much as liked a photo in years, now asked for my number, my business card, my secrets. Brooke wasn't finished. She turned to the crowd, her voice rising above the noise. This woman's work saved dozens in my network. Our hospitals depend on her platform. How did none of you know who she was? Suddenly, someone near the front, one of the local tech bloggers, spoke up, waving a phone. Isn't MedEcho just a rebrand of that failed Seattle project? I heard there's a lawsuit pending. How do we know this isn't all smoke and mirrors? My breath caught. A few people started whispering, and I saw my parents' faces blanch. Before I could speak, Brooke stepped back, shooting a glance at Lila. The crowd turned toward my best friend. Lila's voice wavered as she confessed, I was approached by Helix Care. I wanted what was best for us. I thought Evelyn wasn't ready to lead. I'm sorry. The room felt like it was caving in. That's when Mrs. Heller tapped her cane, her voice slicing through the tension. Enough, she said. I was at the conference in Portland when Evelyn demoed MedEcho for the first time. She built it from scratch, under her own name. I've used the system at my clinic for months. If you want the truth, ask the patients whose lives she's changed. Don't let jealousy write the story tonight. The room grew quiet. All the questions, the doubts, the betrayal, they dissolved in the conviction of her words. I felt the weight of every glance, every whisper, every missed opportunity. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even nervous. I just felt steady, like the ground had finally stopped moving beneath me. I took a breath, stepped forward, and let my voice fill the space. I built MedEcho for the people who needed help, not for the spotlight. It's easy to see the loudest ones in the room, harder to notice the ones who are working quietly in the dark. But sometimes it's those people who change everything. I'm proud of what I've done, even if no one saw me doing it. Max's face crumpled. He crossed the room, shoulders slumped, and, for the first time in years, looked me in the eyes. I'm sorry, he said. I never realized. I should have seen you. The room held its breath. I let the silence stretch. Let them all feel what I'd felt for years. Then I nodded, small but real. It's okay, Max. Now you do. The applause that followed wasn't loud or thunderous. It was scattered, a little awkward, but honest. That was enough. As the party wound down, I slipped out a side door, cold air stinging my cheeks. My phone buzzed, dozens of texts from family, relatives, reporters, old friends suddenly hungry for a piece of my story. I stared up at the stars and realized I wasn't running anymore. The truth was finally out, and it wasn't just the room that had changed, it was me. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. There were messages from Mom, Dad, even distant cousins who hadn't spoken to me since grade school. At first, I let the notifications pile up, letting them feel the silence I'd lived in for so long. But eventually, I agreed to meet, on my terms. We sat in a quiet corner of the harbour cafe, steam curling from untouched mugs of coffee. My mother tried to start with small talk, but her hands trembled. We failed to see you, I'm sorry, she said, voice rawer than I'd ever heard it. Dad nodded, unable to meet my eyes. We thought we were protecting you, but really we were just blind. I took a slow breath. I spent years thinking if I worked harder you'd notice. If I was just louder, maybe you'd finally listen. But respect matters more than pride, Mom, and silence can hurt more than any words. It was the first honest conversation we'd ever had. No hiding behind awards or family dinners. Just truth. It's laid bare. Later that week, my parents did something I never expected. They called a press conference with the Rockridge Gazette. Standing beside me, they publicly admitted how little they'd understood about my work, about my world. For the first time, I saw humility instead of pride in my father's eyes. We're proud of our daughter, he said. Not because of what she's built, but because she never gave up. especially when we didn't believe. That night, Max showed up at my door, a box of my favourite pastries in hand. We sat on the steps, legs dangling over the edge, watching the last streaks of sunset. He was quiet for a long time before speaking. "I used to think you were lost," he said. "But maybe I was the one who didn't know what it meant to be strong. Maybe you're the real role model, Ev." I smiled, feeling something inside me finally settle. "I'm just me, Max, but I'm not hiding anymore." Weeks passed. Lila and I decided to launch a mentorship program for local girls in tech. We hosted our first event in the high school gym. The seats filled quickly, girls of every age, some shy, some fierce, all hungry for a chance to build something that mattered. Mrs. Heller came as our guest speaker. She stood at the podium, cane in one hand, telling stories about her clinic, about finding courage to lead in a room that didn't always want her there. She ended with a nod to me and Lila. "Don't wait for anyone to clap for you. Build anyway." As the event wrapped up, I watched the girls trading ideas, their faces lit with hope. I realised I'd never really been invisible. I'd just been facing the wrong direction, waiting for validation from people who couldn't give it. That evening, I walked the Rockridge Pier alone, feeling the ocean breeze on my face, hearing the hush of the water below. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace, not because everyone finally saw me, but because I no longer needed them to. Not all justice is loud. Sometimes it's found in what you build in silence, brick by unseen brick, out of the spotlight, out of reach of anyone's applause. If you've ever felt overlooked, doubted, or made to feel small, you're not alone. I used to think I needed their recognition to prove I mattered. But recognition fades. Conviction, what you do when no one's looking, stays. Have you ever been in my place? Have you ever done something incredible only to have it ignored? Would you forgive the people who never believed in you, or would you let your success become your quiet revenge? Tell me in the comments. Would you rather be celebrated by the world, or would you rather quietly rewrite the rules, just for yourself? Recognition fades, conviction stays. What would your story be? Poll on screen. Would you forgive your family, or let success be your silent revenge? The ocean wind sweeps in, carrying the distant sound of applause, faint but real, and I walk forward knowing my story is just beginning.